All right. Is everything working? Maybe. Who knows? So, today I'm going to talk about face theory. And I've talked about this before, and if you didn't watch that video or you were bored mindless by it, don't worry too much. Because I want to focus more on practicality than what it explicitly says. So, quickly, the core concept behind face theory is the idea that, particularly in the early moves of the game, one way to identify better moves is the moves that maximize how many directions your cards face that they are safe to versus how many directions your opponent cards face that they are safe to. That this is one way to potentially create advantage or find neutralizing ideas. And so I looked through my database of games and I picked one somewhat at random. Specifically, I picked the first one I saw that had a corner starter, which happened to be this game, and which was played between Akiyama and Addy. I think they both played very well. It ended in a tie. Really excellently played game. This was from January 2023 chat tournament, I think. Addy ended up winning it. Addy had a great run at the start of the year. Anyhow, I thought this game was really interesting, and I thought Akiyama played a really good starter, and so I thought this might be a nice game to apply the theory to. Now, I have laid out a chart, and I will show it briefly, of scores of different moves according to face theory, different moves type against weak corners, against half safe corners, and against safe corners. And in general, negative scores are good for second turn, positive scores are good for first turn. If you want to be maximizing, none of this will make any sense to anyone but me, and that is okay because we don't have to worry about that. What we do have to do, and why I think this is useful, is it presents a sequence of move types to look for. So we don't have to understand how face theory works, and it might not be correct. I think we'll want to make amendments to it over time. But I do think it has, I think this game will show it has some virtues, and it gives a sort of priority plan of we want to make this type of move. If we don't have that, here's the next type of move we look for. And if we can look for those moves types quite quickly, this is not a slow search at all. And it's kind of what all players do anyway, but more formulaically. And more formulaically may sound like a bad thing, but also, if you want to become more reliable at games like this, you start understanding hey, in some spots, I gotta make sure that I check the key stuff to check before I try to be creative. I also think the priority list this puts out is wrong. Like, it's not exactly correct. It's not particularly close to exactly correct. I think it's pretty good, and as we look through examples, I think we'll start seeing where it might have strengths and where it might not have strengths. So, this game saw the starter 7, 2, 5, 9, and 7. But actually, before we look at that move, what should we be doing on the opponent's turn? I think there is a quite easy thing to do that we can have done during their turn. Where is our potential safety and where is our potential half safety? So, we can look at our opponent's hand. Our opponent is the blue player, and we can quickly check their best number in every direction. They have a 9 going up, they have a 9 going left, they have a 9 going down, and they have a 5 going to the right. So, 4 of our cards could be half safe going to the left. We might notice 8, 5, 9, 4 if they were going to the left from a central column, that could pick us off. But for the most part, anything on the right row is going to be at least half safe going to the left. Really good to have in mind. Going down, our highest number is a 7. Their 9 is going to beat us. Going left, our highest number is an 8. Their 9 is going to beat us. Going up, our highest number is a 9. They can't beat a 9. But it is again worth, now we might take a moment, because we have time, it is their turn, to say, oh, okay, 8, 5, 9, 4 could give our 9 up troubles if there are plus walls in the right squares. Their 8, 5, 6, 7 means our 9, 8, 3, 4 only is particularly, has a chance to be particularly safe in a square like 7. Other squares won't work. So, okay. They have a weakness to the right, so all our numbers left are strong, and maybe our 9 up is half safe, maybe not. It looks like a number we can't recapture, though, so that's pretty low likelihood to be a good move. Alright, so we've kind of just noticed, okay, where's their directional strengths, where's their directional weaknesses. Accordingly, because cards are inherent. Like, obviously a 2-8-6-9 is better side to side and is better left than it is right. But in this game, if that was instead of being a 2-8-6-9, it was a 2-8-6-7, it would still be effectively better to the left than it is to the right, even though it has a high number to the right. Its left number is a lot more powerful because it's about how it relates to the opponent's hand. So we figured out what are the strengths of our hand. We want left power to face out, and what are the strengths of their hand? Everything else. We have a really bad hand here. We have these two side to sides that are very similar. 5, 6, 7, 8s are very good, but we don't really want to have these redundant ones. Our cards don't recapture each other very well. This is not a good hand. And after Akiyama's, as I've said, excellent starter, in this position, the solver informs me that of the 40 possible moves, there are 8 squares left and 5 possible cards to put in each square. Of the 40 possible moves, 33 of them lose. Now, that doesn't mean 33 necessarily lose in practice, but when I clicked a few of them and said, how many losses are there, they said, there are a bunch of moves that win against this move. So, this is to say, this is a very dangerous position. There are probably a few moves that lose, but humanly would be hard to punish you for it. But even if they don't play the forced win, you're probably still in a very dangerous spot, so you could still easily lose. I think it's safe to say this is just an incredibly dangerous position. And if we want to categorize their move, we can quickly do so. It is half safe. We can take it from 8, but we cannot take it from 4, and they can recapture from 4 if we do take from 8. All right, so it is a half safe starter. And I can bring up my game plan for what to do against half safe starters. What are the best things to do according to face theory? And again, I think face theory gives a kind of initial game plan, and we'd all want to make amendments for ourselves. There are some types of moves you just don't like. You're like, I understand that move works for other players, I will not be playing it. I have many strong preferences. For instance, I think opposite corners are a great way to reply to a corner starter. I do very few in my own games. And there are reasons for that. But I have no criticism for people who do, and I think moves there are often very good and quite often the best possible reply to the starter. I also think people who play, I mean, specifically the reason why I do, is I think far corners have a higher decisive rate, and I basically try to minimize how many games or wins for either player, because if there are very few wins, there are very few losses, and I think I can do well in tournaments playing in that style. But I play a very low risk style, and opposite corners are a much higher risk move, and so rarely am I comfortable with moves that are as vague as opposite corners. So for me, looking through this, I would be like, okay, I want to lower the priority of opposite corners. For me, I don't think they play as well. There are specific move types I do well with, I do badly with. Now, I think it's easy to make mistakes here, right? It's easy to tell yourself, I like this type of move, and just think to yourself you do well with it. And actually, your results with it are not good, and it's a place where there would be clear improvement to your game, right? Now, I've done some, I was once asked to, and some other times have not been asked to, but there are 2 or 3 players I've tried to do kind of in depth looks. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, he tried to stalk Delhi. I didn't. Delhi varies way too much. Too hard to, pin down what he's going to do in any position. But there are 2 or 3 players I did deep dives on of just kind of, are there formations they're doing really suspiciously out of? And one thing you notice is the samples are pretty small, right? There just aren't that many tournament games played. But if you are playing more games of your own, you probably start to have a sense, hey, this didn't work out, or this isn't working out. I think, maybe it's something like you really don't like seeing side starters. You just find side starters unpleasant. You don't like the games that result. That's a sign that might be a spot to work on. If you love seeing corner starters, you're probably doing pretty well against them. That's usually an indication that, if you think like corner sides and center starters, which one of those, when I see it, do I go, that's a pain, right? That's probably the one where maybe you need to update your priority list, right? Okay, so the first priority against a half safe corner in general is the top best possible move is a fully safe corner of your own that also sets you up against the side you can't take. Now, in general, the top priority stuff by Face Theory system is fully safe cards. And we know we just don't have them. We did that check on first turn before their turn happened. Even though it was Akiyama playing, we still probably had time to check it before he moved, though maybe not, because Akiyama is far too fast. But we probably quite quickly said, okay, we don't have fully safe cards. So the best option would be a fully safe card in 1 that sets us up in 4. That would be incredible, right? It would get rid of our weakness and, turn their strength into a weakness. Now, you might say technically the best move would be a fully safe card in 5 that set us up against them, and that would be pretty radical, but, okay. I excluded the fully implausible from my priority list, but that might be something you wanted to pull back in. I don't think that's the one you should, though. Okay, so top priority is fully safe stuff. The best fully safe option is a setup, right? Is something that sets us up so we now have a threat in 4. All right, we don't have any of this. The next best option is a fully safe other corner. We don't have any fully safe corners. Throw that out the window. The next best option, fittingly, is a move in 1, right? A setup move, right? Something that is an adjacent corner to their strong corner we can't take, that sets us up in 4 and has a direction that's safe. And this might be a moment where we wanted to just check, do any of our cards land in 1? We know none of them will be safe, right? We know that card's outfacing numbers are to the right and down, and we have nothing that's resistant to our opponent's hand that goes right and down. So we're never even going to have partial safety there. But the ideal square to go, according to Face Theory, but also I quite like going in this square against this setup. I think this is a strong recommendation. And we can talk about that. The reason 1 is so good is because it takes away, right, the thing that is giving us difficulty. We have a real threat to go in 4. And if we can have strong outfacing stuff, we have a real threat to start locking in our own card. And if they start trying to lock in their own card in 7 by going in 4 or 8, we go in the other one and we snag their card. And those positions come with some advantage. And in fact, I think we recently saw adjacent corners, specifically in Vid's run in TTAC 15. Both the matches he had trouble with, he had against Tezuka and Dalial in the quarterfinals and finals. Both those matchups were decided when he reacted poorly to adjacent corners and was lost immediately, and his opponents executed those games very, very well. So, or was not lost immediately, but lost both games. And so this is not something that's only affecting, this is affecting high level, top level play. Is adjacent corners are good, and specifically adjacent corners that set you up against something that you'd already have trouble with. So that's the top priority. Ideally, it's safe, but also if it's partially safe, that's good too. And if it's not safe at all, maybe we have nothing that's partially safe, that could still be an appealing option. So obviously I'm talking more than you'd actually talk during a game, right? Or you'd actually have to think. This video is longer than the thought process during a game. During a game, what we would have done is we would have checked for safeties and half safeties during their turn. And now we would be saying, first, do we have anything in 1 that sets us up in 4? 9, 8, 3, 4. That is a 3 facing down and a 9 facing up, so we'd need to have a 1 facing down to set it up. We don't have that. Our 2, 8, 6, 9 would need an 11 facing down. We're not cheating or hacking. We don't have that either. 5, 7, 6, 8 would need an 8 facing down. We don't have that, and if we did, we'd already have a capture in 4. 5, 6, 7, 8 needs a 5 or 9 facing down. Worth noting, it could be either one. We don't have either of those. And 3, 8, 4, 9 needs an 8 facing down. We know we don't have that. We cannot set up in 1 to have a threat in 4. We can't set up safely. We can't set up partially safely. We cannot set up at all in 1 to set up against 4. So this is, and because we know we don't have any potential safety there, 1 is probably not an appealing square. So okay, we did our 1 check. We've ruled out 1. Where are we going to next? Well, it thinks the next best setups, or the next best things to do, are capturing fully safe. Playing fully safe captures. right? We know we can only capture from 8. You don't have to check if you have caps in 4. We already know that. Captures that are fully safe. But this also tells us that, when we get to the partially safe, is one side safe, captures are also going to be high on the priority list. And if we have no potential safety at all, captures will still be high on the priority list. It wants adjacent corner setup, is favorite, and then captures. And these both, what they do is essentially remove the problem, right? Going in 1 says, I don't have 4, I'm going to make sure I do have 4. Going in 8 says, I don't have 4, I'm going to get rid of these squares from the game. I'm going to go 8, you'll go 4. Now, there are a lot of moves in 8 that suck here. First of all, we only have one move that is half safe in 8. It is 9, 8, 3, 4, but it doesn't count as half safe if we don't have a recapture, and because they can take in 9, we can't retake in 5, that move doesn't count. We have no safety in 8. But we should also check if we're comboed, and this is something that we'd have to look a little farther forward to get, but if we're capturing, we don't want to immediately be comboed back. So if we're going to go in 8, we got to play with a card that can't be comboed in 9. We have no full safety, we have no half safety, and let's dodge being comboed. Well, we have 3 cards with an 8 to the right, and that's not good, because 8, 5, 6, 7 has our number. We have 1 card with a 6 to the right, and 7, 3, 5, 9 covers that. So our 1 move in 8, our 1 candidate move so far, is 5, 7, 6, 8, and 8. This is our first candidate move in the position. We may play 5, 7, 6, 8, and 8. It has no safety at all, right? There is no direction, there is no face it has that it is safe to the opponent. But our list says against half safe corners, our best option is to set up against it, and our second best option is to capture it. And 5, 7, 6, 8 is our capture in 8. It's our only viable one. Right now, that is the top of our candidate list. But we can look at the next option. The next option is other corners, right? So this could still be in 1. It could be a move in 1 that doesn't set up 4, but just any corner where we have half safety. Ideally, we'd have full safety. We don't have that, but we haven't checked for half safety yet. And here we can find a few options. Specifically, we know they can't take anything facing to the left, right? But secondly, we need to be able to take our card back. So, either of our cards with an 8 to the left in 9, we cannot recapture. Those are out of the picture. But 2, 8, 6, 9, and 9, we can recapture. 5, 7, 6, 8 has the recapture, and that is half safe to their hand. They cannot take the 9. 3, 8, 4, 9, similarly in 9, half safe. It's a corner, right? We have responded to their half safe card with a half safe card of our own. We have the recapture. We could say the same thing in 3. 2, 8, 6, 9, and 3, 8, 4, 9, and 3. We can recapture both of them, and they don't have a threat from one direction. And finally, 5, 6, 7, 8, we have the recaptures, and they have no capture from 2. So we have come up with 5 different moves that are half-safe corners in reply. So these are our next 5 candidate moves. We have 6 total candidate moves so far. We have capturing in an uncomboable way. We have this corner. We have this corner. I should have been moving these around the whole time. We have this corner. We have this corner. And we have this corner. 6 moves. Okay, what's next? And again, if you look at the last video, you'll understand how I built this priority list, but it really doesn't matter. I think it's useful to have a priority list. Here's what I check for, and just make sure you never skip over seeing something you should notice. Because if your priority list is properly built, these are the moves that should be most likely to be good, right? And so it should be stuff that, like, you know you're checking the key things. If there is something really strong here or that is usually good, you're not going to just miss it because you happen not to look for something, right? That's what we're trying for here. All right, what else we got? Yeah, so against these corners, it wants an adjacent setup, a capture, another corner, and this method has trouble rating center setups, but maybe a center setup. Center setups could be worth considering. You could insert somewhere. I tend not to like center setups myself, so I kind of like that the system hates them. But it says somewhere in here, if you have, one side that's tough for your opponent, like that they can't take, and it sets you up by going in the center, that could be somewhere in the mix with other moves that have kind of one safe side. Maybe a little weaker, but still has some appeal. So let's look for center setups. Our first card is a 3 facing down, so to add up, it would need a 2 facing to the left. We don't have that. Our next card would need a 5 facing to the left, meaning if this was to land in 4 and plus, I find this the easiest way to check. Is a 3 versus the 7, so it would need an 8 versus a 2 in the center. We don't have that. This card would need a 5. We don't have that. This would need a 6. We don't have that. This would need a 6 or 8. We do have that. Let's come back to that. And this would need a 3, which we don't have. So this is the card we're looking to set up. We need a 6 or 8. We have 2 different 8s we could put in 5. The second part of this, though, is would either of these cards create something? I guess we only have 1 8 we could put in 5. So would playing this in 5 create something that our opponent can't take? And the answer is no. Because they have this plus, they can take it from all directions. So we would not create anything that they're not happy to fight against, but we would set ourselves up. Face theory doesn't like this kind of move. You may, but face theory says this move is bad, and I will say this move is actually losing. This is not one of the 7 ties here, so well done to face theory. And so that's basically what face theory says the list is. It says when you see a corner starter like this, top priority is an adjacent corner that sets up against it. The more safety, the better, right? So it thinks like a fully safe adjacent corner is better than a fully safe capture, is better than a fully safe another corner, is better than a partially safe adjacent setup, is better than a partially safe capture, right? So it has this order that goes from safe to least safe and goes adjacent corner setup to capture to other corner. And you could throw somewhere in there center plays, but it doesn't like center plays, and you should think about how you want to evaluate those if you think this whole thing is interesting. So we identified 6 moves. We identified 6 possible moves. Now, I'm not going to pull back the curtain and say all 6 of these are ties. We just identified 6 of the 7 tie moves. We did not. We identified 3 of the tie moves. And our 6 candidate moves, which I will remind you, are here, 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 and here. Of those 6 moves, 3 of them tie. And I think that's a pretty good result, right? We've gone from 7 tying moves out of 40. Obviously, most people are not picking their move at random, but you've gone from 7 ties out of 40 to 3 ties out of 6. And I think this is the kind of thinking that good players are coming up with a few ideas and thinking about those ideas. And some players do it more by well, let's figure out all my ideas and then let's start thinking through them. But most people do it kind of, here's the move that popped out to me first. I start looking into that. No, I don't like that. What else is there? And find other ideas. I think most people tend to think more like that. But most people are going to end up thinking about, I don't know, 2-3 moves during their turn, something like that. Say 3. Say the average person considers 3 moves to some real amount, not very vaguely oh, I could go there. No, I don't like it. But a little more thought than that. Maybe you look at 3 moves a turn. We could actually, someone could look at my videos and see how many moves per turn do I think about. But anyhow, here we've identified 6 moves. That's more than you're gonna be able to consider effectively. But it is to say, all right, again, I keep talking, video goes on, but this is not the length it would take during the game, right? In the game, let's actually do this. I mean, we've been doing it the whole way, but in the game, I would already know my half safeties and full safeties by the time my turn came around, just by checking the opponent's best in each direction. And I would go, okay, adjacent corner setups in 1. Do I have that? No, 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 no. Won't let me click anymore. There we're back. Okay. No, 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 no. All right. Captures, can I do one that is not comboed? Because I know that's not going to be safe. 9834 is the only one that could be, and it very much isn't. So can I do anything that's not comboed? No, no, yes, no, no. Okay, so we have a move in 8 that's possible. Do I have any good corners? Okay, half safe corners. I know they're really weak to the right, but I need to be able to recapture myself. So anything with a 9 or 8 facing out from 3 or 9 could be, but I can't recapture 8s facing out from 9. So scratch the 8s there. And I need 5, 7, 6, 8 to recapture an 8 facing left from 3. So scratch 5, 7, 6, 8, and 3. Okay, we've done it. We've identified the 6 moves, right? So this could be much quicker, and I'm sure people could do it much quicker than I just did, right? But there's sort of, half strong corner. There are 3 types of replies I'm supposed to consider. Let's do a quick scan of each, and it's better if they have more safeties facing out. And we've come up with 6 moves. And it turns out Addy actually made one of these moves and held the tie. One of the ties is Kraken and 9, which is what Addy played. The very similar 3, 8, 4, 9, and 9 also holds the tie. And 5, 7, 6, 8, and 8 happens to hold the tie. Of the 6 moves, the 3 losses are all in 3. Does this tell us opposite corners are bad? No, it does not. What I think it tells us here, and again, this requires a little more calculation, is basically that if they stick something in 8, we need to have a move in 9 in reply. And we really don't here. You know, something like this, maybe we can combo back in this exact spot, but this kind of thing is very scary, right? Walking into this combo. But even if we're not walking into the combo, like, something like this is pretty scary. We don't have a move in 5 that isn't comboed, you know. We don't have something to put there. Something like this is not safe. We can't. It's just very unpleasant to react to in 9 here. We don't have a good move in 9. Now there's always some chance you have a move in 6 or somewhere else. But as it turns out, this position is indeed losing. I think some people would say, well, why is this losing? It sets us up in 5, and the same card it sets up in 5 is also set up in 9. This looks pretty good. I would guess that the problem is you don't actually want 5 because this happens in reply. And my suspicion correctly is you lose here. That would be my guess. I didn't actually check. But I think the main takeaway, because there's a bunch of lines that work this way, every move in 3 loses to usually more than one possible card in 8. And that is very telling that when we do the opposite corner against these half-strong things, we have to check 8. So we maybe update our priority list. Maybe we don't like opposite corners as much. But I think the better conclusion is not that we don't like opposite corners. It's that if I play an opposite corner, I need a game plan against 8. And I don't think the moves, and you know, you could easily get seduced by this one, or sorry, by this. I mean, this obviously has some real appeal. 5, 7, 6, 8 looks very good here, though it turns out not to be. But they could stick something else here too, right? And you know, maybe you have setups against everything, right? This looks appealing here. Again, turns out to lose because you don't actually want the 5, 6, 7, 8 to land in 5. Which is a shame. So, but I think the conclusion here is when you do opposite corners, you need a plan for them blocking the weak side of their card. It's the natural thing for them to do, and it tells us something about first turn as well. You know, if you play one of these half-strong corners and they don't interact, the most, on average, the best thing you can do is block in the weak side here. So, okay. Is this an impressive result? That, you know, we had 7 ties out of 40, and it correctly identifies 3 out of 6 of them are the moves that pop out to us in this system. I think that's a pretty useful hit rate. And I think it would not take significantly more calculation to end up with one of the reasonable moves. Yeah. To me, this would be a little hard to make without looking a little further. Like, I would have seen, okay, if here I can't quite combo yet because they combo back. Ah, okay. I combo this way, but they also have the combo back there. Is this quite working? Maybe I can play a setup in 2 and try to get them to run out of cards so that, like, at some point I play 1 or 1 of 5 when they don't have the card for the other one. I'm not sure. Something like this would take some figuring out. So I think where we've landed is kind of like Addy did the very rational thing. He did a move we identified, and there's not some like tricky combo setup we have to worry about. So very practically and well played by Addy. I think he probably selected the most comfortable way to hold. I think Akiyama played here. Did I write down the rest of the game here? I'm not sure I did. Sorry. Yeah, I did. Okay. Akiyama went here. Addy went in 6, setting up 5. And here it's not so bad if we land in 5. Previous lines, there was a big combo back in 2, but of course that's not going to happen here. Addy went in 6. Akiyama blocked 5. Addy presumably went in 3. Yeah, grabbing safety. Nice 9 facing out. Akiyama went in 2. Addy went in 1. Not letting me move. And we have a tie. So really nicely held by Addy. And Akiyama did nothing wrong here. I think his starter is excellent. But we applied a priority list. We said half-strong starters. Here's the game plan. Here's the 3 types of moves we look at. We only have to check 3 move types. Other move types have scores, but those scores are enough lower that, like, these are the things we're going to check. And, like, sure, if you had a card that was safe in 6, that would score really well. But any card that's safe in 6 is probably also going to be safe in 3 or 9. So, like, and there's times that's not true, but, like, it's very unlikely for this system to think other moves are better. I narrowed down to, like, most of the time, it should like these moves, and we have a clear game plan. Setup corner, capture it, just get rid of all the bad squares, and any other corner. There are 4 squares we need to check here. And there's not all that much we need to check so far that we've learned something about opposite corners. Opposite corners did not come through for us here against a half-strong starter because we didn't have a game plan with any of them against a move they make in 8. If our 9-8-3-4 was something like an A8-3-4, obviously that would not be the case at level 8, but pretend it was, had an A facing up, I bet going in 3 would tie, right? If we had a safe card to put in 9, I bet that would hold. But we don't. All right, so what I wanted to do here is bring up this, scroll to just a random game. Let's make it not one I've played. All right, Delial Metis. Did this have a corner starter? No. Addy Acela had a corner starter. Oops. No, I don't want to be showing you this. I gotta bring up a blue hand and red hand thing. And what I'm gonna do is we're gonna put in the hands from this game. I'll let you actually see what it looks like when I put in hands. I make this all small because it helps, can you actually see this? I don't know. I make this fairly small because when I copy paste the hands, it then puts them like this, and it's easy in just a few button presses to get them on 5 different lines because this program needs them to be on 5 different lines. While if I put them in while it's big like this, it takes more button presses to hop between lines, and I have to click around a little more. Anyway, not important. Okay, so we've put in hands. Oh, but I don't need to have put in the hands here because we are looking at it in our nice form. You know what? I'm going to pause the video while I put in the next hands from this game, but we will be looking at this game, which we'll see a step. There's a rare in this game. Okay, let's scroll to a different random game. Okay, Delial Zoom. No. That's not a rare. That is, though. Alright, let's look at Sir Smoke's Ray Emanator. Nope, that has a rare as well. Alright, let's look at Ray Emanator Delial. That's not a corner starter. This one. All right, here's our game. When we come back in half a jiff, this will be the game we're looking at. All right, I've put in the game. I haven't checked anything, so we're just going to be looking at it ourselves. It's probably a little off center. We're just going to be looking at it. We're going to be figuring it out together. But whatever the starter is, we're going to. Oops, I should pop out the starter. The starting move is going to be 6, 1, 7, 4, and 1. Right, I'm going to put that in. We're going to go back. We're going to be the blue player this game. And as the blue player, while they're thinking, we should do our check of their directions. They have 7s down, they have 6 to the right, 6 up, and 5 to the left. So their super card is 6, 6, 7, 5. We have 7 going up. That could be safe. We have a 7 going to the right. That is safe against their hand. We have 6 to the left. That also is pretty safe. And we have 7 down. We could have potential safety in every direction. This is a game where much more safety is going to be available to us, and non-coincidentally, I think this will be a much easier game to not play a losing move. Alright, so our opponent plays in 1. Now, the most likely card to be safe is something like a 6, 7, 1, 3 corner and 7. That is not safe. But first of all, we've been thinking about that during our turn. Now that they've played the move, we should be thinking, how many ways can we take their starter? And the answer is both ways. This is a completely unsafe starter. So, what's our game plan? Our priority list here is, in general, just checking what it says. Corners and captures. Okay, that's easy to check. We have 5 squares to check this time. Last time we only had 4, because we can capture either way, and we can play corners in 3, 7, or 9. Again, this system doesn't like moves in 5, and it doesn't like moves in 6 or 8. So those are 3 squares we're not going to consider. If you like moves in those squares, obviously make adjustments, or say this whole thing is nonsense. All right, so we got 5 squares worth checking. In general, our top priority is to do something fully safely. Given that their super card is 6, 6, 7, 5, we can pretty quickly see we have no fully safe squares, right? A 7, 6 or 7, 5 corner for 7 would be, but we don't happen to have that. So, okay, we have nothing fully safe. What about partially safe? Well, we have a lot of that, right? We can look with Tarama. Tarama is partially safe. Nope, Tarama is not safe in either direction. There's 5, 3, 5, 5. Yeah, so it's good to start looking at moves. Tarama, not safe here. Half safe here. Can we recapture it if needed? Yes, we can. 3, 4, 7, 5 gives us the recapture, as does 7, 2, 5, 5. Does it give up one of our captures? No, because we have 2 cards that can capture in 4, so we are allowed to use either of them. So Tarama in 9 is one move that is potentially appealing here. Okay? What about this guy? Is this half safe? This is half safe, and we do have the recapture. So 3, 4, 7, 5, and 3 is an appealing move. We like our corners. This card might have a bunch of squares. It is not half safe here. There is a same in 2. It is half safe here. Do we have a recapture? Yes, we do. And it is half safe here, but we do not have a recapture. So we've come up with Tarama 9, 3, 4, 7, 5, 3, and 3, 6, 5, 6 in 3. Nope, not in 3, in 9. So each card has 1 square. Here, here, here. What about 7, 2, 5, 5? Alright. This is not half safe. This is half safe, and we do have the recapture. This is not half safe. Alright, this is 1 square. So we have 3 cards for opposite corners and 1 for 3. And what about 6, 7, 1, 3? This is half safe, but we don't have the recapture. Nothing else is half safe. So corners give us 4 candidate moves. And I think, I'll bring the game up actually for a sec. Yes, Delial in fact made one of these moves. Delial played Tarama in 9. And when Delial has played a move, that is a pretty strong seal of approval. So, okay, We have 4 candidate moves. In general, corners it thinks are a little better than captures, but capturing is the next best option. Now, we have a lot of ways to capture, but again, the principle is we want to capture in a way that creates a half safety. Now, more advanced play, I think, would say a move like this is actually still interesting, but here we don't have a recapture on the half safety, so this is not for us. This is half safe to the right, but we don't have a recapture from 3. So that's probably not really what we're looking for. This is also half safe with its 7 facing towards 5. Or this, but neither one do we have. Ooh, this one we do have a recapture. So 6, 7, 1, 3 in 2 would also be a move it thinks we should consider this system. And I think that's it. So we have 5 candidate moves. It didn't take too long. We know corners over captures against unsafe starters. Against half-safe starters, it went adjacent setup, capture, corner. Here, there's no need for an adjacent setup, right? There's not a side we need to set up against. So adjacent setup is the same as other corners. And corners become better than capturing because against the half-safe starter, it's good to interact with it and get rid of squares that will be bad for us. So it is more useful to capture if we're going to make a move where we can't create any advantage, anything hard for them to take. We'd rather capture than play some random corner. Here, we already can take. The interactive moves go down in value, right? If we have to interact, if they've created a threat, a problem for us, interactive moves, setups, or captures raise in value. If they have not done anything we need to interact with, generic corners move to the top of the chart. And I'll re-say what our kind of priority list is against everything at the end. But against this, generic corners are top priority, but capturing is fine too. And we have come up with 5 moves. Tarama in 9, which was the move Dalial played. 3, 4, 7, 5 in 3. 3, 6, 5, 6 in 9, was it? I think so. 7, 2, 5, 5 in 9. And 6, 7, 1, 3 in 2. And those are our moves. Now, I think you'd have more time after you came up with these 5 possible moves. So you could say, okay, say they recapture from 4 here. They recapture this way. They have no capture in 5 here. So I could do maybe something like this, and it's starting to be hard for them to grab too many cards, right? If they grab 2 from 5, well, we can recapture from 3, or we could just block in from 8, right? You know, that one we can combo. So let's make it something we can't combo. You know, something like this, we have way more locked, you know, our cards look better than theirs. But we have other options too we can play here. And if they go somewhere like here, you know, something like this looks pleasant for us. It's just hard for them to take things, right? Because we've created difficult faces for them to take. That's the whole point of the strategy. And similarly, if they go here, they don't have a capture from 5, so captures from 7 look kind of appealing, and this quickly looks to me like it should lead to a decent game for us. So I think the move in 2 looks pretty good. Delhi's move in 9, we know if they can play in 2 or 4 and start locking in, but we always have the capture in the other square. Nothing to be too worried about there. I don't know why we'd be too worried about this. This looks good. 7, 2, 5, 5. One advantage of Delhi. I think if I remember this game right, I thought Delhi should have played here, and he played here. But keeping 7, 2, 5, 5 gives him an extra recapture in 6, but it gives him one less capture in 4. So it depends which card you think's better for the later game, but they're very similar moves. This is a little bit different, and I would start to feel like some of my cards were overworked. I think this card being our best card to the left is kind of useful. And I would also think, okay, now I need 6, 7, 1, 3 for 8, but also that's one of only 2 cards I can play that go in 4. I'm starting to feel nervous that I'm too committed to this card in a few squares, and that it's going to be very bad in some other squares. It has no down left. So I would be uncomfortable making this move, but, By this system, it looks fine. And 3, 4, 7, 5, and 3 looks very pleasant, right? Say they block the in-between square. It would be easy, for instance, there's a bunch of options, but say to play 6, we set up a threat in 5, we have a threat in 4, our remaining cards look pretty good for the rest of the game. It's hard to imagine this is a tough spot. Now, it might just be that, like, I think Raminator's hand in this game is a bad hand, right? He was struggling to find a starter and, like, couldn't find something that was too threatening. But I think we've come up with 5 options that are all good. And what I'm going to do now is 2 things. First, I'm going to just go through the priority list against each move type, or against each corner type. I haven't done sides or center stuff yet, but against the 3 types of corners: fully safe, half safe, not safe. Not safe to our hand. And then I'm going to go put this game into the solver and see if the 5 moves we identified are in fact good. I suspect they're all pretty decent. My least favorite is 3, 6, 5, 6, and 9, but I think we have identified 5 good moves, and you would have good results from this position with any of those 5. Now, you may have, on your own, easily identified any of those 5, but it's nice to reliably get there. What I want to do in later stuff is sort of fill out face theory, right? I've kind of only been applying it to thinking about second turn. And where does it take you? What are the kind of standard positions you're going to get on fourth turn, right? If you have these moves on second turn, yes, they tie, but we might not be good at playing the resulting positions. So basically against everything, we are either capturing, playing a corner. Yeah, capturing or playing a corner, right? So we need to know how to play positions that come at, and if you don't like one of those, you just get rid of it, because every game we've looked at, we've had options of both types. In fact, of all 3 types, because there's adjacent corners, far corners, and captures. So there's 3 types of moves. If one of those moves doesn't click with you, you just cut it from the list, right? This isn't, and maybe you add center plays somewhere in here, and maybe you add far sides, though I don't really recommend it. But I think the goal is to take a game that is really complex and figure out strategies that work reliably and that lead to positions you're comfortable in. So I am less comfortable playing far corner positions, so I lower my evaluation for these, right? And I'm not like following a priority list in the way this suggests, but like we all sort of are in our head. For me, moves like this, there's a little bit of, hey, I don't want to take that risk, right? But in a must-win game, I should play more of these than I do. I've never been. I always treated the Rhinoas like they were just must-win games all the time, and I just played horribly in them. And I was just playing so opposed to my style. And obviously, like, I win a decent number of games playing my normal way. I should just play how I normally play. Some people, like Sir Smokes, is very good at adapting to must-win situations, but I do not have that talent. All right. So here's our priority lists. And we could figure them out similarly for sides, and I will, and centers. Though I suspect what they tell you is what you'd guess. Against center stuff, find the move you can make, which has the hardest stuff for them to take. Make that move. It's fine if it's in a corner, it's fine if it's in a side. Just make the move that is toughest for them to, if you have a card that's half safe in a direction, play that. That's what face theory will definitely say against center starters. Against side starters, I think it'll say, play in a corner. If you have safety next to their side, play there. Otherwise, play in one of the far away corners, ideally half safe. I think the priority list there is very simple. I think face theory has a massive preference for corners over side or center play. And so the kind of priority lists it will come out with will always be like, yeah, go in one of the corners and ideally be safe. And it's easier to be safe next to a side starter, so it would just say play there. So not too much to say. All right, here's our game plan. Against fully unsafe corners like we see here, our best moves, according to face theory, are corners ourselves. The more safe, the better, of course. Fully safe is best. Half safe is good. Not safe at all, not so good, but sometimes you have nothing that puts pressure on them or you can't recapture. So sometimes that'll be forced. It says go in a corner. It does not say against an unsafe opposing starter which corner is better, adjacent or far, and you could easily make an adjustment due to your preferences. I think more combative players tend to like far, and more kind of calculating players and like risk averse players play in adjacent corners, which have a very high tie rate, by the way, I was noticing. Anyway, that would be my take there. But yeah, so against unsafe, top priority, play a corner. Second priority, capture. Pretty simple. Against a half safe corner starter, now there's some incentive to interact. So top priority is an adjacent corner that sets up against it, followed by a capture, because that gets rid of the bad squares for us, followed by one of the other corners. And again, one of the other corners will be adjacent, one of them will be far. You might have a preference between them. Face theory does not inherently, but you probably should. And maybe you shouldn't. Maybe the ideal player wouldn't. Like, both are very good move types. But anyhow. Against a fully safe corner, which we did not look at here, um, most people like center setups if they're available. And I think face theory is just not capable of understanding that a center setup against a fully safe corner is very good for you. In most cases. So if you have a center setup, consider that. But what face theory says is top priority is an adjacent setup, right? You're not going to fully set up both ways, but setting up one way it thinks has good value and should be the top choice. So if their card in 7 was safe, and say this set up 3-4-7-5 for 4, and that was the only way we could threaten 4, this would be, at least we've created something. Maybe we force them to block 4. All right, this is going to be a terrible example. So pretend this created a threat in 4, maybe forces them to block 4, and now maybe we can play something in 8 and start setting stuff up. Now we have cards to play against, even if we couldn't play against their card in 1, and maybe we got to lock in a card. So it thinks the best is an adjacent setup. The second best is another corner, just any other corner. Third best is center setups. And the fourth best, there is no fourth best, there is no captures. So it thinks against fully safe corners, it would only check in 3 corners and in 5. And it would ignore all side squares. Though actually, like if you had a fully safe move here, it would probably consider that. I don't know if I checked there. Oh, that just counts as in the corner section. Yeah. It thinks a corner that's fully safe here and a corner and something fully safe here, same value. It doesn't matter you're helping lock in their card, it's safe anyway. So its priority list goes set up adjacent corner, followed by just anything that's safe wherever it might be, or partially safe wherever it might be, followed by center setups. And that's it. And I think that priority list makes some sense, right? Against a fully safe corner, it says kind of take what you can get, and if you can put some pressure on their card, do so. Against a partially safe corner, it says ideally you remove the partially safe part of their card, you set up against that. But if you can't do that, you find a way to get rid of that square entirely, possibly by capturing. And if you can't do that, play the corner that gives your opponent the most troubles. And against an unsafe corner, like we see in this game, it says, okay, there is no need to interact. They have not put pressure on you. They have not made a threat to lock in because you do have captures in both directions, and you should play whatever corner is best. If you don't find any corners you like, capturing can also be good if that creates some difficulties for them. But probably just play a corner. And that's kind of what face theory puts out. And I'm not completely sold on face theory, though I think its recommendations are good here. But I like the idea of just making sure you know how you're going to react to different things and making sure that like you are comfortable with those reactions, right? If you see a move like this and you're like, 9 looks interesting. Or like, maybe Maybe 6 has fun synergies with my hand. Like, this is a big risk to take, right? And we can kind of narrow down and make the game more manageable, as difficult a game as it is. All right, we're going to do one more pause, and when I come back, I'm going to have brought up the solver, and we're going to look at this game and look at the 5 reactions we came up with, one for each card. All right, so we have brought up the solver. I have checked how many moves lose to this. It turns out there is one move out of 40 that is a forced loss against this, and it is, unsurprisingly, a far side move. These moves tend to be the riskiest, but not always the worst. And I certainly, there have been spots where they were the only positions that tied. They can definitely be correct, but they're the least likely to be so. Okay, so that means all the moves we considered tie, but like Ray's hand is terrible here. Like, it's, we're not crowing off the rooftop, hey, we have an advantage against this bad random our opponent got. The question is, how can we press our advantage? In general, positions where there are very few losing moves against the starter indicate that second turn is a pretty large advantage, and I think that's the case here. So this was one move we came up with, and I'm going to see how many of the opposing moves tie. It is running right now. We're just going to see how many ties and losses does the opponent have after each move. Now, sometimes this is kind of silly, because sometimes it's like anyone in this position would play one of these 2 moves, and even if everything else lost, they're going to play one of these 2 moves, and so it doesn't matter that there are, in this case, 7 ties and 21 losses, because the 2 moves anyone would make are ties. And it does turn out both of those moves do tie. But that doesn't mean they tie easily, right? Being tied 3 moves into the game at no level of triple triad guarantees the game will actually result in a tie. But, alright, this gives our opponent 21 moves that lose. What about this? Our mark to beat is 21 losses. And it's going to take a sec to run. This is looking like it's probably going to be similar. This gives them 22 losses, only 6 ties. All right, this is too close to be able to differentiate, but in general, because this move is more forcing, you'd kind of expect there to be fewer ties. You'd expect, like, okay, here and here tie, but like something here might be kind of ridiculous. While after a move like this, something here isn't ridiculous at all. So in general, if the capture if the opponent has more ties or similar number of ties against the capture as they do against a non-capture, usually the non-capture is the harder move in practice to tie against, because there should be more ties against it, even if those ties are equally difficult to find. So I think, all right, this 22 losses for the opponent, this 21 losses for the opponent. I'm definitely going with this as the better move. All right, we have 3 moves left. This was the one I was least enthused about. Want to run, buddy? And already, very quickly, it's found 6 ties, 7 ties, 8 ties, 9. All right, so this is going to show up as the worst move. This one has 14 ties, 14 losses. So our leaderboard right now is 21 losses, 22 losses. We want them to have more losses, 14 losses, which is still advantage second turn. Usually, if by third turn, half your moves tie and half your moves lose, you're probably a little behind. So I think this is like slight advantage second turn, and this are more like clear advantage second turn. Okay, we have 2 moves left. We have the 2 moves in 9. I believe, though I don't remember too well, but I believe this was the one I wanted Dully to play. And I believe this was the one Dully played. Could be remembering wrong, though. My move, 21 losses. So far, 3, 4, 7, 5, and 3 gives the opponent the most chances to lose. Though, again, in practice, these numbers are close enough that you'd have to actually analyze more deeply than I'm doing here, and I wouldn't trust it that strongly. And Dully's move in 9, 20 losses. Okay, so we have our winner is 22 losses, and our runner-ups are 21 losses. 21 losses, 20 losses. That's all. I would guess. Okay, so I would think this is probably best, second best, third best, fourth best, but I think they're all very close. And then this one, distant fifth best at 14. So my guess is these are 5 pretty good moves here. I think 4 of them lead to a clear advantage where it is difficult for first turn to survive, and 1 leads to a slight advantage where first turn easily still might not survive. Now, maybe this was an easy random, but we did pick a random game to do. This was an honest test, and I think face theory looks pretty reasonable here. I guess another question is, does it identify better moves than people are actually playing? Like, if it can usually say, okay, here's 5 pretty good moves. People are pretty good. What if they're already making moves at least this good? Then face theory is not going to be helpful to them. But maybe this video could be useful to players who are newer to the game or not as good at the game. And also, we don't all play deli level moves. This identified 4 moves that were basically all equally good with the move Deli played, and the move I wanted to play. So, 4 moves of Deli was up quality, and 1 move of not as good quality. And that's pretty good, right? If you have an 80% chance to play the move Deli would have played, you'd be a pretty good player, right? And the other move is not even that catastrophic. So, okay. I think that's all we got on this second face theory video. I think basically what face theory says is very straightforward. It says you want to play cards that the opponent has trouble taking. So I think the game plans it lays out are not that complicated, right? Let's say this was played as the starter. Now this makes no sense, right? Because if it's captured, you don't have a recapture. But pretend it's not captured. Pretend this move happens anyway, which makes no sense. It says, okay, this card in 1 is safe to 2 but weak to 4, so I should block 4, right? And if I can do it with something they have trouble taking, all the better, as long as I can recapture. This is the only card in 4 that they have trouble taking, but I can't take it from 5 either. Okay, let's chuck whatever there, but it would draw you to go in 4, lock in your card, right? And that's generally what it's going to be saying. It's not a significant advance on other kind of lock cards in, play to support your safety. But I think it might have a few more things to say of interest. So actually, here's one. Let's say this was played. Let's actually go back to the game. So here. So we diverged from the game on move 2 in 3. What does face theory say first turn should do? Right now, first turn has a card in 1 that is weak in 2 directions. Second turn has a card in 3 that is weak in 1 direction. I think we already should have a feeling for what face theory is going to say without having to do the math. It's going to say, do you have something that removes their safe side from them? So immediately, a move like this jumps to mind, right? Something that says, let's set up in 6. I want to have a threat in 6. You don't get to have a half safety. We're going to set up in 6. Now, we may remember, we have 6 ties out of 28 moves against this move in 3. This was the move we have the fewest ties against. And I just ran it, and this is one of our 6 ties, right? So the kind of, if they have partial safeties, we want to get rid of their partial safeties, immediately led to one of the not very many ties here. Another move that comes to mind is here. This also sets up in 6. How does this do? And we have found a second of our 6 ties, right? 6 ties is not very many. We've already identified 2. And it was very much that, oh, there's a half-safe corner. How do we interact with it? We set up against it. And what did we do before if setting up against it wasn't available? Well, another top option there when we want to interact with something is to take it. So the third move that comes to mind for me is this. We take and we are half safe. This also takes, but as it doesn't come with safety, and as this card seems like it's very good at facing the action, this seems much more appealing. Is this a third tie? Well, it's running slower at the moment. But the answer is yes. We have found a third tie. We have taken a position where there were only 6 ties. By the way, I think this move is pretty straightforward to make. And so if this ties, like, I do think Delhi's move is probably better. And now I think that this move and this move are the 2 best moves here. Both of which, again, were also identified by face theory. But I do think Delhi all played a move that is better than a move that gives the opponent fewer ties, right? The humans are good at this game. We have some cleverness, and just doing the tie count doesn't check us. But we have already found 3 ties against this move, and we have very much followed the principles that we've been running with. They played a half safe corner. Can we set up against it in an adjacent corner? Yes, and those moves tie. Can we capture it and just remove the bad squares from the game? Yes, and that move also ties. And what's the third thing that we might check? Oh, do we have like half safe corners ourselves, right? Can we set up more stuff that is hard for them to take? And I think the answer to that is just no, but maybe this comes to mind, right? This is actually fully safe to their hand now that 3, 4, 7, 5 is out of it. That seems appealing by face theory. Let's see if that ties. And we're waiting. So far, so good. Yep, we have found 4 of the 6 ties here. We're doing great, right? We see corners and we understand how we want to react to them, right? The part that we can take, we could take, but only if we need to get rid of the square, right? Only if we have trouble taking other ways, so we want to do something that removes the squares around it. So yeah, we've already found 4 of the 6 ties in this position. I'm kind of think we've run out of things that face theory suggests. So let's just find what the other ties are. All right, there were 2 ties we missed, and they were here. Nope, we found the 1 and 9. So one of the ties we didn't find was here, and the other tie we didn't find was here, which is deranged. So, screw that one. So we missed, like, I guess one possibly findable tie. But I think the moves we looked at were probably better moves than that. So without too much trouble, like, face theory is pretty good at understanding the value of corners and how we want to reply to them. So let's keep going. We'd rather set up against it than take immediately. So let's play here. This is our chosen move. But you can also take immediately. There's a good argument for taking immediately. Face theory tends to prefer this kind of move. Humans tend to prefer this kind of move. But okay. Second turn. What do? Well, everything on the board is capturable for us and for our opponent. Note that we do have a capture in 6. 3, 6, 5, 6, and 6 does give us a capture. That is not half safe. Okay. But if we use 3, 6, 5, 6, we lose 6. And every other square that there's a capture, we have a redundant way to do so. Okay. So we might look for a few things. 1, we still love corners. Can we play a corner that's like half safe and we can recapture? Well, the problem with the kind of half safe corners is we can't recapture them. Can we play something that's safe? We can. We can play something that has out-facing stuff they can't interact with well. Right? We at least got 1 safety on the board. I'm not sure any other move jumps out based on face theory. Face theory might not be good at telling us about 3 corners, but this is the move that jumps out. Have we lost the game? No. In fact, we have played a move that gives our opponent 1 tie and 1 tie only. And it's quickly apparent why that is. It's because this is horrible given this. Right? Yeah. So, here's where face theory sort of merges. If you watch the face theory video and think about it, you'll understand face theory agrees with like locking in cards theory. We want to go in 2, 5, or 8 to lock in 3, 6, or 9 respectively. We don't have a way to lock in 5, so we'd like to go in 2 or 8. 2, this move sucks, and this move, does this also suck? This also sucks. Was checking if we have some setup in 7 at the end, but we do not. What about 8? Well, we could play 6-6-3-3, or we could 6-6-3-3 looks very scary, right? We're just checking combos one move ahead and saying that looks horrible. This position happens to be a tie, but that looks very dangerous to walk into. What about this one? Do they have any combos there? I don't see any combos. Here's our move. And this is the only tie in the position. What's the loss on this one? Apparently many losses, one of which is here. Okay. But we quite reasonably, we didn't calculate too deeply, and we are playing a game I think that has been played at a very high level, as verified by the solver, which regularly looks at late tournament games and goes, you missed wins, you played losses, this is not right. We are playing very well here, and we have tied. At this point, I would say the game should be in calculation mode, at least for high-end players. Every high-end player has made mistakes with 4 moves to go, but also every high-end player should mostly get these right, and this should be in the calculation zone. But let's say your calculation, you can calculate 3 moves, but you can't calculate 4. All right, let's see what we have to say. Well, we should probably look at lock-ins first. So the only moves that can lock in a card are in 2 and 5, right? 9 flips 8, but doesn't lock it in, right? Okay. So we're going to only consider 2 and 5. We don't want to walk into like horrible combos in either of those squares. That would be bad. I also notice, oh no, they do have a threat to capture the card in 6. I was going to say they have threats in 2, but not in 5. So, okay, where do we end up here? Usually you sort of block in cards starting with locking in corners before sides. I don't know if I've ever turned that into a generalizable principle, but that means this is probably the first move I'd look at. And I would generally assume if we hold against this, we tie. And we not only hold against that, we beat that. Oops, everything closed. One sec, let me reopen that. It didn't close for you, that's great. Bloop, bloop, bloop. But it did close for me. I like that when you close a window, the screen recording software just assumes that the window's been left open and just doesn't leave it. So, okay. So we're playing our fantastic game, perfectly played, and I would assume this is a pretty good move. Yep, this ties. They have 4 ties and 2 losses. Somehow I selected the only loss for them. But at this point should be in calculation, and that's one possible way the game could end. I'm not too fussed about calculating the end of the game. I mostly wanted to say to recap the game according to face theory. They played a corner they could recapture. This was the only move we didn't do with face theory, but let's include it. At least it's recapturable, but it can be taken in every direction. On the other hand, Blue's hand has Red's hand beaten in basically every direction, and the only directions it doesn't are 6s to the right that Red can't even recapture anyway. So Blue has Red's hand directionally controlled. Given that, sure, this is a reasonable starter. I think Delial's move in 9 was a little better than this move in 3, but this move in 3 says, hey, you can take from one side, you can't take from the other. I created problems for you, while you were unable to create problems for me, and I should have some advantage. Red said, okay, I know what to do against a half-safe corner. You just played one. I may be on first turn, not second, but I can apply the same principles. I am going to remove the half safety it has and make sure that is a card I can approach in all ways. Second turn said, okay, well, I see no half safeties in corners. I see nothing like that, but I do have a safe card, so I'm going to play that. You can't approach this. And first turn said, oh no, I need to go in 2, 5, or 8. I have nothing in 5. Anything I do in 2 is comboed to hell. I guess I got to go in 8. 6, 6, 3, 3 is comboed to hell, so it's going to be 4, 6, 7, 1. And this turned out to be the only tie in the position. And then second turn goes, okay, I should probably be locking in things too. maybe there's a better move than this, but whatever. It's all ties anyway. And we reached a tie, and a very well played tie at that. So at some point, calculation takes over, and I'm not quite sure how well this applies each turn, but it's really helpful to have a way to narrow down how many things you have to look at, rather than like I know I've introduced friends who are very good at this kind of game to triple triad, and like a position like this feels so difficult to comprehend. There's 40 possible moves. How do you narrow it down to things that make sense? And most people who have stuck around, like, you don't look at this position and think, oh my god, there's 40 different moves I could check, and the variations on each are so long, right? We all have heuristics and ways we figure this out. But I'm pretty pleased with this face theory idea. And I think it is a step up from simply kind of locking in cards theory, right? Like just go for safety and security. I think this is adding something. I think it's saying something that goes a little beyond that. And you can still go beyond that. The first game that we spent so long on, right? It identified 6 responses to the starter. 3 of them lost. They all lost in the same way. That tells us something about where this is breaking down, right? Where this is misevaluating moves. You adjust for that, and like, look at the game it just played. It just played an excellent game of triple triad. Sure, Delhi's move in 9 probably a tad better than the move we ended up with in 3. But actually, face theory didn't prefer the move in 3 to the move in 9. I only switched to the move in 3 because the solver liked it. Screw the solver. You don't know anything. So yeah, I think I'd love it if there was someone out there that this clicked with. I think that probably won't be the case, but I think there's a kind of intermediate level player that could make a big jump in their game by really structuring their thinking, right? And thinking, okay, this is how we deal with this type of move, and just being consistent in executing that. I think there's something to that. And in the end, the only person that will watch this video all the way through is maybe Turds. If you made it, shout out to you. Leave a comment, like and subscribe. I don't do that. Goodbye.